All right, so here's the decathlon for Augusta Flight Center. So we got a composite prop, so make sure that you take that into account. It's not metal, so it's not, if you walk into it, it may actually break. For the oil, it's just right here. This is your inverted tank. If you're going to do aerobatics, the minimum it required is 6. If you're just going to do pattern work, you can get away with 5. So, just like all the others, unscrew, take a look, and we are at 5.7, call it. So if you want to do aero, add a little in. It's 15W50. And then make sure you get it like this, and then push in like so. You have the vortex generators up top. Preferably, obviously, all of them. You are allowed to be missing 4 total, provided none of them are next to each other. Case in point, these 2 cannot be missing. These 2 can. All right, come on along. You may see tape on some of these inspection panels. It's just a fact of wood fabric planes and aerobatic. So, because of this, obviously, we may be missing some from flight to flight. So every single flight you need to check both wings. You'll see there's 2 down there on the belly, and there's another 3. 2 on the other side and 1 in the far back that we'll take a look at. Make sure you look up top. None of them are poking through, but these little areas where you see where it's been stapled and glued, those are the areas you need to pay attention to. Anything that's screwed, if you just touch it real quick and it's not loose, you're good to go. If you're noticing any screws loose or missing, taxi it up to the maintenance hangar and we can actually get that taken care of. Right. No flaps. Here's a good case in point. So you see how this is starting to wear out? This is normal, and we will be fixing this, but this is the kind of stuff that you need to make sure is not getting worse flight to flight. You should never be able to just peel it off.
If you have any questions, just ask the maintenance guys.
Yeah. We'll come back to the fuel in a little later. All right, while we're here, again, same thing, just looking to make sure there's no holes, tears, etc. So again, you're not seeing any here, that's good. Going back to the vortex generators, there's a set underneath both sides. Same rule applies, and it's for both through the leading edge and these that you can be missing. If you're missing 4 total anywhere on the plane is no longer airworthy. All right, tail. This is really important because this is where all the control is, and tail wheels rely on the tail way more than a 172. So you have the connectors for structural, then you have the hinge. Each hinge must be a bolt, crown screw, cotter key at each junction.
Okay.
So it's 2 on the right side, 2 on the left, 2 here on the tail, or on the rudder, sorry. Then on the underside, springs need to look alike. So if this one's looking way more loose than this one, please let me know, I'll order a new one. They need to be symmetrically tensioned, basically. Here's your rudder cable. Crown screw, cotter key with a bolt. So now we're up to 2, 4, 6, 8, just on the tail. Make sure this is greased up. If it looks like this, you're good.
Nice.
Tail wheel, make sure you got plenty of tread. The tread on the tail wheel after we do all the landings tends to wear out rather quickly. So if it looks a little bald, report it immediately because the next flight's probably going to go flat. If you notice, you got the light down here too. So this is night VFR capable. Just there's no internal lighting though. You got your trim tab, you got the piano wire, and another crown screw cotter key. So now we're up to 9. All right. Go back to the structure again, make sure this is here. Another inspection panel. It was taped, now it's not, so it tightened up, thankfully. Again, if you get these little holes, you can tape them, and this is taped. That's allowed. Eventually, they will be repaired to factory new, if you will. Antennas, we do have a VOR. There is no VOR in this plane. This is actually your comm antenna, not the ELT. The ELT is actually, see it right here inside the little yellow brick. And that antenna, the wire coming out the top, that is the antenna.
Okay.
There's nothing external. Come underneath, something I forgot to mention, you got all these little holes. These are intentional. Those are drain holes to keep moisture out of the wing. You got inspection panels. Come down here, here's the other two. Sorry, there's actually 3 more. 1, 2, and 3 way down on the end. If you lose your phone and it goes all the way to the back, open up that last one.
Okay.
Coming around this way, same thing as on the other side. Make sure everything is either, there's no holes unaccounted for, things are tight. And they look as they should if it were to roll off the line, as best it can. Oh, so watch your head. You have your spades.
Oh,
Don't try and bend these. So spades are basically power steering when you're doing aerobatics. So at all the unusual attitudes that you're in, these ailerons by themselves don't work as well. So what this does is it induces an aileron further into the slipstream that will help them stay effective in all attitudes. But the angle of attack, so instead of just having this top part be introduced into the relative wind, you also have this part with the wind hitting the top side also taking it, which will help pull the wing down if you're turning to the left. Watch your head, these hurt like hell. And if you bend these, do not try to bend them back yourself. Basically, if these get bent, myself, or Doug are gonna have to go out and fly it, test it, and tell the mechanics how to bend it back, or we will try to do it ourselves. Do not do it yourself. Come around to the front side. Notice that some of these are different colors than the other side. We lose them. So every single pre-flight, you need to look at the underside of both wings and the belly. If you're missing any, come find me, I have spares. You have a stall horn. You have your pitot and static port. You have your brake lines. See how they loop it. That is to allow for the brake line to stretch, and so it will not break. All right, and come back to that. Oh yeah, air filter. And you can't see the alternator belt because of how they do the baffling in here.
Okay.
So, again, put your hand on as many screws as you can see to make sure they are all tight. The cowl, the top part, will lose screws from time to time. There's no mandated, like the vortex generators, if you're missing 4, you don't fly. But I will say, if you're missing 4, don't fly. For fuel. So this has an inverted system, so there is no longer 3 sumps. There's now 4, and they're all, the 3 of them are in standard positions, 1 under each wing, so that's 2. You come up underneath. The 4th one is this guy right here. So this is the tube going into the bottom of the gascolator. This plane takes 100 low lead only. No MOGAS, no 87, nothing.
Okay.
100 low lead only. We'll go back to this way. So that's 3. And the way the inverted system works is that there's actual tubing that comes all the way back to this point. All right, so that's 4. You must do all 4 because technically that's the lowest point. And got it. Nailed it. All right, so you have your standard brake pedals. Only the pilot is on top of the master cylinders. So, and then you're mechanically linked to here, and these pedals are for the back seater. Again, mechanically linked, but the rudder cable is directly connected to them. So essentially, the back seater has better rudder authority. The front seater has better braking. All right, so this header tank is a stand pipe only, so you are limited to 2 minutes inverted flight. If you get more out of it, great. You just became a test pilot. You have 2 circuit breakers up here for the bus and the field switch. Everything else is back here, and they're all fuses. The fuses you actually use, and a spare set on top. You have your mixture, your prop, broken EGT, half broken G meter, because the positive one needs to be fixed. Broken clock, everything else works as advertised. Magnetic compass, and then you got your squelch, volume, Hobbs, transponder, and this is a GPS radio combination unit. The way it works is this part of the screen right here will have your frequencies, primary on top, secondary on bottom, and then the GPS usage on the right hand side. It is out of date, it is VFR only. All right, you have your alternate static down here should you need it, along with air vents. Airworthiness registration in here. And then here's the binder, log sheet, fuel card. These tanks, they are 20-gallon tanks, but since the tail is lowered, they're sitting like this instead of level. So this is the cheat sheet, also on the checklist.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you read 4, there's 9 in the tank.
Okay.
If you read 11 and a half, it's 18, or sorry, 16.
Okay.
This was done the same way as the Champ was, emptied, and put 1 gallon at a time is put in.
Okay.
And then the rest of it is all the inspections, aerobatic maneuvers, and the speeds that you need. Use knots. There are no miles per hour on the airspeed indicator. Then all the inspection sheets, and what's that? There we go, weight and balance. You'll notice that you can actually be at max gross and be prohibited from aerobatics. This is because you have a heavy person in the back seat. This plane is soloed from the front, and all the weight should be as far forward as possible. And then here's the actual POH in the back, start to finish. Fuel stick. Unlike the Champ, we actually chose a gauged stick from a 172. Standard tanks, so the max fuel should be 19. Some 172s have an extended range tank. You cannot use that stick for this plane. Usually I shove it right back in here. There we go. Let's see, so this is a fuel injected engine. So even though you have your throttle with what it says a hot, alternate air, cold, it is alternate air. So yes, it has a similar effect, but it is not carb heat. Yeah. So your trim tab, default having the knob right at the first E of the elevator is a good default, and you can adjust accordingly. A little goes a very long way. It's effectively a elevator on its own. You have your fuel shutoff. Thing to remember about this fuel shutoff, it only cuts fuel to the tank. So if you have a leak prior to the tank, the fuel can still come into the cockpit. If it's after the fuel tank, it'll take you 2 minutes to burn it off, or pull the mixture. And then the only controls the teacher has is the alternate air throttle. their foot can move the trim tab. So student, make sure that this is over a little bit so you are not pinching their foot in place. You have 2 sets of seat belts. You have the 5-point, 1, 2, 3, 4. 5th, they all link up. There is a cross-country seat belt. Top half is back here, and the second half is underneath you. There you go. I advise you to always wear the 5-point from experience. Back seat has a more robust 5-point. All right, so here's the master. These are your mags. Beacon, nav, and you can read the rest. Once you start the engine, make sure you switch this little guy to on. If you don't, you are running down the battery, and you will have a dead battery by the time you land.
That FLD is alternator field.
Yes. Also, an alternator can give you wildly varying amps, so you need a cutoff. That's your cutoff.
Okay.
Essentially, if you're in a 172 and you have your red switch, the 2 sides, one side is your master, the other side is your alternator field. There you have your amps. So whenever you first start the plane, you'll have run out the battery a little bit, so it'll read high, and eventually it will come to just in front of the 0. And there it shall stay if you've done everything right. Then you got your emergency fuel pump, which is really your boost pump, if you will. You need this for starting, and you need this for aerobatics. Do not do either of those without having this on. All right, so here's your fuel gauge. You can't read it, can't see it, not usable at all. It's completely useless. It's there just to meet a requirement.
Okay.
The way they rig it, though, is that both tanks are linked, so you can consider them as one tank. I would not, but that's what the book says.
Interesting.
To do aerobatics, to do regular pattern work or cruise, there's actually 3 different fuel burn rates you need to keep in mind. If you leave the mixture full rich, in a 172, it will burn 10 gallons an hour. This one will burn 11.5 to help with cooling for aerobatics. You can then rotate it out, get to cruise. You can get it down to 172 area at about 8.5, 9. And then while you're on the ground doing your run-up, you must lean this out at least a good inch to inch and a half. If you don't, you will fail the mag check. Going back to the aerobatics thing, you have to shove more fuel into it to keep the engine cool, so they rig this to run extra rich on the ground. So to counter that, to do the mag check, you must lean the mixture.
Okay.
You got your prop. Honestly, unless you're going cross country, you'll never touch it.
What's your settings? If you were going cross country, what would your settings be on, like climb out and then cruise and then descent?
So for climb out, you can leave the mixture full rich at that point, but 25-25 is as close as I can come up with, because there are no performance tables for any of this, because it was made before standardization of POHs.
Okay.
So, but from what I've gathered, like I said, you can do 8.5 to 9 on the lowest side, probably 9 to be conservative. If you're doing regular maneuvers, it'll be about 10. So
Okay.
cruise, you can be as low as 9. Aerobatics, you're going 11 to 12. If you're doing a little bit of everything in one flight, plan for 11.5. Or whatever is going to require the most fuel burn rate for the entire flight. Always go high, don't go low. Reason being is, so you can miscalculate. You can do aerobatics, and you can say, oh, well, I'm going to burn 10 an hour because of this engine. Okay, so now you've shorted yourself about a gallon. Okay, not big deal, because you're supposed to land with 30 minutes extra. But you saw the fuel gauge and the conversion, and the fact that you are at an angle here, and you're at an angle at the fuel pump. You can also, just by that, lose 1 to 2 gallons. If you dip it incorrectly, you can also lose 1 to 2 gallons.
which means if all those errors line up against you, you will have lost your 30-minute reserve.
All right, fuel caps are not vented, so they must lock in place. If they feel loose, don't go. Take the stick, you want to get it at the back, furthest back of the filler lip, and go straight down. Then everything is normal. I don't know if you can see that, but we are sitting at a little under 2 gallons on this, which really means we're about 8 to 9 gallons in the tank. Do this 3 times and take the lowest of the 3. Do not average, lowest. If you do it like this, at an angle, well here I'll do it like this, so now I got 4. If I do it this way though, I have nothing. Straight down. This is also why when you go straight down and you get 0, it can be anywhere from 0 to 5. That does not mean the tank is dry. Again, it's because that tail is not elevated to make this tank straight and low.